Buenas tardes. When Gail asked me if I was interested in speaking, I said, sure, what do you want me to talk about? And she said, well, just tell them your story. And I thought about all the stories that I enjoyed growing up, and all those stories that I enjoyed had pictures. So today I brought pictures for you. And the story that I'd like to share with you starts when I was 9 years old. That's when my family immigrated from Zamora, Michoacán, Mexico. I was born there, and at 9, I got to a small little town an hour east of here, Hood River, Oregon. Everything was different. People dressed differently. People spoke a different language. People ate different foods. Everyone was just a little bit different. And I quickly realized that when you yourself are different, it's very easy for everyone around you to tell you who you should be. And that's when my name was changed. It was during a 5th grade roll call on a Monday morning. My teacher started saying roll call, and she went from John, and John answered here. And she went to Sarah, and Sarah answered here. Jennifer said here. She went like that until she got to my name. And then she did a double take. Her, Jerry. She settled on Jerry. How do you go from Gerardo to Jerry? I could understand Gerald. I could understand Geraldo. But Jerry? And just like that, she not only changed my name, but the rest of my life. I was just 9 years old at the time. I didn't speak English. I was taught to respect my parents, to respect my teachers. So I didn't question it. I just went along with it. You see, I wanted to fit in. And fit in with time I did. But fitting in came with a price. You see, my name was first changed in the classroom, and then it was changed in the courtyard, and then it was changed in the entire community. And before I knew it, it was like a wildfire that had spread too far. It was too late to go back. Few people actually knew my real name. I accepted my name, but as time passed, I knew that it wasn't me. I felt ashamed. I felt dirty. I felt like a fraud. I felt like I let somebody down. You see, Juan had become John. Maria had become Mary. Victor had become Vic. They understood. Other people, they just didn't get it. They didn't know my real struggle. And for a long time, I felt a lot of guilt because I let it happen. But now I realize that I was just 9 years old. I was voiceless. I was still trying to learn English. I was afraid to speak up for myself. In fact, from 5th grade all the way to my senior year in high school, people called me Jerry. It was written everywhere in my bilingual documents. It was on my school ID, the school yearbook, even the local newspaper. They even misspelled my fake name. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually like the name Jerry. The name itself is actually quite nice. The only problem I had with it was that it wasn't my name. But it had become a bad dream that just wouldn't end, and I needed to wake up. I needed a fresh start. I needed to own my name and start telling my own story. We live in a world where stories matter. Companies, big and small, spend a lot of money trying to tell us their story. Take a local company, for example, Nike. Their story helps us connect to the athlete within us, and it inspires us to act by purchasing their products. Fantastic story. Or even Angry Birds, a popular game by a relatively new company that has a story that's ever-changing. It has all of us intrigued and interested. In fact, some of you are probably playing right now. This year, companies paid over $4 million for a 30-second commercial during the Super Bowl. You see, they understand that we, the consumers, can connect to their product they sell through stories. But it wasn't until I got to college that I realized that my story mattered too. That it was my story that got me there. That it was my story that got me an invitation to write a book, that it was my story that got me my job, and it's the reason I'm here with you today. And let me let you in on a little secret. It was my story that got me my wife, because it sure wasn't these looks. But my story is not much different than many of yours. I am the oldest in a family of 6, and I am proud to be the first to graduate from college. My parents only finished an elementary education, and they made great sacrifices so that I could have a better future. When I asked my parents why they came here to the United States, they said, to work, to have a better future. And then I asked them why they brought their kids, and they said, to study. To my parents, to study meant finishing high school. But times have changed, haven't they? To study now means finishing college. Students, as a growing community, we need you to overcome all your obstacles, finish college, because our community is in great need of Latino professionals. In college, I faced many obstacles, and I also learned the things that I wanted to learn that I was never taught in high school about me. I learned about Chicanismo. I learned about immigrant rights. I learned about racism. I learned about sexism. I learned about all the isms that ever affected me, which were the reason why my name was changed. I learned that when you don't know who you are, it's really easy for people to tell you who you should be. And that's when I needed to reclaim my history, my gente, my people, my culture, my name. And like washing it off my body, I said goodbye to Jerry, and I embraced Gerardo. Now, those of you who are first in your families understand the challenges it is to be the first one to go to college. I went from high school, a small high school in Hood River, to the University of Oregon, go Ducks, where over 20,000 students attended. The school had more students than my town had residents, so it was a big change. Living on my own, trying to figure out a new system, and surviving was incredibly difficult. I was a little tiny fish in a big, big pond. There were times when I felt lonely, isolated, overwhelmed, scared, and I began to doubt myself. I questioned why I was in college to begin with. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I wasn't smart enough, like I wasn't good enough, like my English wasn't perfect. And all of that led to me wanting to give up. I missed the home-cooked food. I missed my mom. I missed my dad. I missed my brother. I missed my sisters. I missed my family. I struggled to even pay my bills. In fact, it got so bad that there were days where I went without eating because I couldn't afford the food. I knew too well that calling my parents for money was not an option. They didn't even have a bank account. You see, my parents were trying to figure out how to support their parents, while I was trying to figure out how to support my parents. And here's the power of education. Today I stand before you knowing that my kids will not have to worry about how to support me. Donors. Thank you. Donors, I want you to know that every dollar you invested in these students will literally change their lives forever, and for that I thank you. But being the first-generation college student was not my only obstacle. It was my health. My freshman year in college, I was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. We all have this thyroid gland right here that controls the chemicals in our body. Mine was hyper, which meant it was producing too much. And what it was doing is it was making my metabolism really fast. It was so fast that at one point I weighed 110 pounds. 110 pounds. Don't let those smiles fool you. I was really sick at that time. I was skinny. I couldn't sleep. My heart was beating so fast that my doctor told me to stop playing sports because he was afraid I would have a heart attack. 19 years old, afraid of a heart attack? I was supposed to be invincible. Now, since I had too much energy, sitting down to read a college textbook was nearly impossible. What do you think my GPA was my freshman year in college? A 1.1. So there I was, a lonely, overwhelmed, skinny first-generation college student with a reclaimed identity and a 1.1 GPA. I needed to dig deep. I needed to find the source of my inspiration, and that's when I realized that in order to go forward, I needed to look back. It had been almost 10 years since my family immigrated from Mexico, and I needed to know why. What I learned surprised me, it angered me, but it also made me really proud. I learned that in the 40s and 50s, the Bracero Guest Worker Program recruited farm workers from my town of Michoacán, Mexico, farm workers like my grandpa. He paved the way for my dad to cross the border over 15 times in a span of 15 years to come to the United States. You see, my dad was a farm worker in Mexico, and he did not have the opportunity to go to college. But he valued education so much that at the age of 19, he went back to his 5th grade classroom, and he sat for an entire year with 5th grade students and 11-year-olds. For the first 10 years of my life, I only saw my dad for 6 months at a time. Little did I know that he was making sacrifices and sacrificing his dreams and goals so that I could have a better future. And that's been my motivation ever since. If my dad can move his entire family over 4,000 miles from Michoacán to Oregon with little money, sin papeles, with the border in between, then what was my excuse for not finishing college? I'm willing to bet your parents have made sacrifices for you. Students, now it's our turn to give our families a better future and not only start, but actually finish college. We need doctors, lawyers, engineers, business owners. Oregon needs you. Our community needs you. When I told my dad I wanted to go to college, you know what he said? He said, "Está bien, échale ganas." And I try to look up what ganas means in English, and there's no direct translation. There's no English word that gives ganas justice. But if you take a little bit of desire and add a little bit of will, mixed with a great sense of urgency, you get what we Latinos call ganas. And I believe that's the key to success, guys, ganas. Students, you must be ready for the life that happens while you're in college. This is where ganas comes in handy. Most of my biggest obstacles happen outside of the classroom. And when college got too hard, I learned to ask for help. When I was broke, I worked harder. When I felt like giving up, I dug deep and I convinced myself to work harder. When I felt lonely, I called my family and friends. Giving up wasn't an option. When it all got to be too much, I did what my parents have always done because it's the one thing they know how to do: work hard y echarle ganas. I believe ganas comes from two places. One, from our obstacles, and two, from that which inspires us. I've already shared 2 obstacles, and that which inspires me is my family. When college gets hard for you, when life gets hard for you, what's the source of your ganas? As I conclude my talk, I'd like to share one of the lessons that my parents taught me. Some of you may know this dicho: camarón que se duerme, se lo lleva la corriente. Translation: the shrimp that falls asleep gets taken by the current. Now, I don't mean to call you all shrimps, but the lesson is a good one. Students, you'll encounter many opportunities in and out of the classroom. Don't be afraid to take risks. I learned this lesson early on after I took a risk, competed, and was selected the youngest student to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute in Washington, D.C. I challenge you to get out of your comfort zone. I challenge you to take risks. You can start today. You can start in this very room among the professionals in here. Introduce yourself, shake some hands, make eye contact, network. One day you'll find yourself among the professionals in this room. Students, once again, congratulations. I know how competitive this scholarship was to win. I sat on the scholarship committee and I read your essays. Whether you're staying in Oregon or studying out of state, remember one thing: Oregon needs you. Our community needs you. Donors, thank you once again for your support to our students. As the African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We've come together here today to help our students go far, and I believe in turn we will all go far together. From the bottom of my heart, I thank all of you. Have a great afternoon.